Okay, good afternoon and welcome to Implementing a Multiliteracies Pedagogy with PK-12 Multilingual Learners. I'm Dr. Kathleen Ramos and my colleagues and I are from George Mason University School of Education, Teaching Culturally, Linguistically Diverse and Exceptional Learners graduate program. And I will let my colleagues say hello.
Hi, I'm Joan Kang Shin, and I'm really excited to be able to present this webinar today. I'm a professor of education at George Mason University, working in the Teaching Culturally and Linguistically Diverse and Exceptional Learners program. And I focus on, of course, preparing teachers to teach multilingual learners.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sujin Kim, colleague of Dr. Ramos and Dr. Shin, and working at Mason School of Education in the same program.
Okay, we'll get started. Joan, yeah, thank you. Okay, so we're going to just share a brief overview of the research related to pedagogy of multiliteracies, look at some great examples for PK-12 English language teaching, and we would like the audience to think about sharing your ideas for integrating a multiliteracies pedagogy. If you are just watching this recorded webinar, then we would invite you to think about that idea when we get to that point of the session. Okay, so briefly, multiliteracies pedagogy, we could say, came into being with a group of scholars who called themselves the New London Group. And they published a multiliteracies framework in 1996, really in response to the idea that being literate today, in today's globalized, interconnected world, is quite different than it was even decades ago. So we have seen a great shift in the way that literacy practices, what it means to be literate, involves different symbolic systems, what we'll call multimodality, and also needs to recognize that communication practices differ across cultures and language groups, and that, of course, the ever rapid changes in technology have been the impetus for us to have to consider what it means to be literate in a different way. Okay, so this slide kind of nicely sums it up. We live in a multimodal world, where being literate means that we have to be able to make meaning, construct meaning, share and build knowledge with images and sounds, videos, color, or all kinds of combinations of those meaning-making tools.
Okay, now before we begin to discuss the implications of this pedagogy of multiliteracies and also showcase a set of instructional examples, we'd like to actually invite you to think about how often you use this approach of multiliteracies in your own classroom. So in the future, we'd like to hear from you that you are practicing it on a regular basis. So now that how does multiliteracies pedagogy benefit our students, especially from the diverse cultural and linguistic backgrounds? Well, many empirical studies have confirmed that the multiliteracies pedagogy can enhance students' engagement in classroom learning and meaning-making by acknowledging and celebrating their real-life experiences and making explicit connections between school literacy and their cultural experiences or imaginations. This pedagogy also engages students in the analysis of diverse genres in multimodal materials and forms, so that they can help learners developing critical insights into a range of topics and concepts such as stereotyping, gender-related power dynamics, and other contemporary social issues. Through these critically oriented activities, the multiliteracies pedagogy can empower our learners to flexibly apply what they have learned in new contexts. So then what's the implication of these important findings for us as educators of multilingual learners? As Koch and Kalantzis, the founding scholars of multiliteracies pedagogy, mentioned, this pedagogy offers ample opportunities of pedagogical weaving or making connections between our learners outside of school experiences and identities, and in-school learning, as well as between their known and new texts and experiences.
Okay, and we see this turn towards multimodality and multiliteracies pedagogy in the Common Core State Standards and other standards frameworks that we have across the United States today, including if you are from Virginia and not in a Common Core state, state standards have to be equally as rigorous to the Common Core standards. So the idea from multiliteracies scholarship is that making meaning in the content areas, what we will call disciplinary areas, really involve using language and literacy in multimodal ways for meaning-making practices. This can be especially highlighted in the new WIDA, English Language Development Standards Framework that was published in 2020. So we can see a clear shift in the TESOL field towards a multiliteracies pedagogy. So multilingual learners in the content areas should be invited in ESOL class and in the content areas to use multiple modalities, oral, written, visual, and kinesthetic modes of communication, real life objects, models, representations, multimodal text as they learn and use language skills to learn. In the line of language skills, another important idea in multiliteracies that we will not unpack so much today, but is something to learn about and think about in the future, is that we also invite multilingual learners to use their first languages as meaning-making resources. This can be thought of as translanguaging practices and drawing on all of their full linguistic repertoire to make meaning. I think the green box really sums it up nicely, this idea that's embedded in content and language and literacy integrated instruction, that multimodality or the use of multiple means of communication is an essential way for all students to access and engage in the content areas or the disciplines of school. In addition to the use of spoken and written language, students also communicate through gestures, facial expressions, images, equations, maps, symbols, diagrams, charts, videos, graphs, computer-mediated content, and other means. We also see a shift in TESOL, an important idea for ESOL teachers especially and content teachers to know, from weak multimodality to strong multimodality. And what we mean by that is that for quite some time now, we have seen the non-linguistic modes or scaffolds or supports such as visuals and representations and models that are used in classrooms just until multilingual learners can do everything without those supports in English only. And the shift we have seen on the other side is recognizing that those non-linguistic ways, those multimodal ways of communicating are the norms in disciplines. That's how knowledge is built and enhanced and shared across disciplines and across audiences. So when we use multimodality in our instruction, we can invite multilingual learners to capitalize on their diverse meaning-making resources and give them a pathway for participation in rigorous standards-aligned content instruction along with their monolingual peers.
So to briefly sum up these implications, through the multiliteracies pedagogy in the 21st century classrooms, we can validate and build upon the diverse learners' learning styles, cultural experiences, and linguistic repertoires that our students bring to the classroom. And also we can provide multiple entries into complex content concepts and also activate critical thinking for deeper connections and understanding of the various social, cultural, and political issues by forwarding representations in multiple and possibly more complex and richer ways. So as the highlight of our session today, we now would like to share a few examples of classroom practices of multiliteracies pedagogy in the PK-12 context. Here we situate English as one of the dynamic multimodal forms of intercultural communication. And we also suggest that English language teachers promote authentic multimodal forms of communication across various borders. Now my colleague Joan will showcase some of examples.
Thank you. So I'm excited to share with you some examples that I hope are helpful to all teachers. And I think many of these examples are applicable across age ranges and across classroom contexts. So the first one actually comes from a graduate TESOL course, but the activity was created to model how to use choice boards. And in this case, it's to check comprehension of a certain concept. So you can see here this choice board, which can be used on a range of topics with learners at all levels. In this case, it was about motivating and engaging CLD, culturally and linguistically diverse students, in reading. And so I gave my own students an opportunity to show that they understood the readings about CLD students' literacy through different ways. So they had a choice. They could create a cartoon or create an infographic using Canva or Pictochart. They could make a short podcast or audio recording. They could write a poem. They could write a song or rap and record themselves performing it on video, or any other creative way that's not a paper or essay response. And so they were tasked to do this and post their final product on Padlet. And one of the things that I'll just mention is that students found that when they use these creative expressions in which they could choose how they expressed it, it actually helped them to deepen their understanding, because they had to try to show that they understood the concepts in different ways. And so it was different from writing an essay or an academic writing about it. And here I'll show you some of the results. So you can see that some of them created an infographic. They expressed in different ways using images as well as even video. And I'll just show you one example of a Powtoon video that one of my students created. And here we go. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that. One of the things that I really also enjoyed about that is that the student also said, give your students choice within the video. Okay, so let me move on to the next slide. And so here you can see also with the choices, some of the students created something for an audience for their own students. Some used an audience for other teachers. So that was another way where they were thinking about their audience and choosing images and expressions that were appropriate for the audience that they wanted to communicate with. Okay, so I thought we could think about another kind of activity. So imagine you are teaching a unit about making good choices, and it includes thinking about health and wellness, something that many of us think about on a daily basis. And you've selected some advertisements to analyze in order to discuss making good choices for food. And so I picked a range of advertisements, thinking that you might be teaching students of different age levels or with different interests. Okay, so here you can see there's one on the left side, drinking Pepsi. There are the two pictures on the right side, which is really interesting because it is an advertisement that I saw in the UK for baby formula. And so you can see that in the top picture on the right, that the baby who uses this baby formula, the baby girl, will grow up to be a ballerina. And the boy who is given the baby formula will grow up to be an engineer. And so it's interesting, right, to see kind of the images and what they're saying in terms of gender. You can see in the bottom, Kinder Eggs. How many of you are a fan of Kinder Eggs? The chocolate with a little toy surprise. Well, again, it's very gendered in terms of the coloring and the toys that the kids are assumed to be attracted to. And then in the bottom left, you'll see that I think this is like a Carl's Jr. ad, right? Where they're showing a guy eating a burger saying, "Man up." So it's interesting, right? So you can use these advertisements as a point of analysis, right? To get students to think critically about what meanings are being made through both image and text throughout these types of advertisements. So I want you to think about how you might use a pedagogy of multiliteracies in this kind of a lesson. All right, so imagine you've selected one of these. Okay, let's just pick the one on the left. And you may or may not recognize this person, but it is Sofia Vergara. She's a very famous actress originally from Colombia, I think in Modern Family. And you can engage students in these 9 key questions. Okay, by the way, this comes from a MOOC that we created at George Mason University called English for Media Literacy for Educators. And so these key questions are adapted from NAMLY's core principles for media literacy. Okay, so think about first, who made this ad? And then why was this ad made? What creative techniques were used in this ad? What are the obvious messages in this ad? What do I think or feel about this ad? What might other people think or feel about this ad? What kinds of people are in this ad? What kinds of people are missing from this ad? And also, what are the indirect messages in this ad? So I want you to just reflect on these questions, and you see how we're kind of going deep in this analysis. And these are questions that students can absolutely answer, but maybe they haven't thought about why an ad was made or who this ad was created for, right? Who is it being communicated to? What are those obvious messages? So if I were to say, what are the obvious messages? I might say, okay, this is Diet Pepsi, and it comes in a skinny can. It's the new skinny can. So I'm thinking, maybe if I drink this, I will be skinny too. 0 calories. Or maybe I'm thinking an obvious message is, oh, if I drink this, then I'm going to be beautiful like Sofia Vergara. Or maybe I can be sexy too, like her. So it might conjure up all these feelings and even desires. And the other thing that we might think about in terms of the indirect messages is, of course, that we're actually making some assumptions about the audience of this ad. Because if I'm saying, okay, it's a skinny can, right? 0 calories, so that you can be skinny. The assumption is you, as the audience for this, already know that it's good to be skinny, or that's the goal, right? So these types of messages can be very detrimental to our students or to people as they are constructing their own understanding of themselves and who they are and what is considered desirable or good. So that's why this is really important, to really start to take a critical look at the ads, because images like this can create a certain image of students of themselves. Okay, so let's take a look at another example. Now, after you work with students to kind of analyze these multimedia messages, right? It's not just about text, it's also about the images and how they work together, right, to create a message. You can have students to create their own ads. Now, I really love this example. It comes from Our World, which is a book series that I am a co-editor on. And this one is about making your own ads. But notice, okay, you choose a product, and then students create 2 advertisements to sell the product. Both advertisements should be for the same product, but one should be for kids and one for adults. And then you make a poster. What a great activity. It's showing too that you're thinking about your audience for this media message. And so as you're creating your own media, you can start to ask yourselves some of these questions, right? So in this case, we're asking, well, why am I making this ad? And what creative techniques am I using in this ad? Okay. Well, what are the obvious messages in my ad? What do I want people to think or feel about this product? What kinds of people will I include in my ad and why? And what are the indirect messages in this ad? So here we're trying to get students to think critically about creating those media messages, and naturally that will deepen their understanding of advertisements that they see, right? Because they've gone through this process of creation and really questioning the messages in those ads. All right, so I hope this also is a very helpful activity. You can use these questions, right? The 9 key questions for analysis and for creation, also in creating any other types of multimedia messages. Okay, now I want to give you another example. Okay, so here, this is a sample flyer created by students who they were doing, I believe, a unit about hobbies. And so what they were tasked to do is to think about the hobbies that they like, and then they are going to try to create some kind of a flyer in order to encourage other students at their school to join their club. Okay, so here you can see that some students were really excited about creating a science and technology club. Okay, so their flyer says, are you the next Einstein? Join the Weston School Science and Technology Club. See Mr. Schultz in room 204 for information. And then you see these pictures of very happy kids who are interested in science and technology. And it says there, have fun, make friends, win contests. And then you see some more kids together down at the bottom, and it says, join us. We do science experiments and we compete in the Wonder Kid Robotics Contest every year. All right, so you'll notice here that this is another example of an activity that we have shared in our English for Media Literacy for Educators MOOC. Okay, now what are we going to do? We will analyze this with the 9 key questions. Okay, so if we say, who made this flyer? Okay, these boys in these pictures. Why was this flyer made? Okay, to get participation from other students in the Science and Technology Club. What creative techniques were used in this flyer? Okay, well, they showed some pictures, right? And one with a kid who's created something in the science club, and some boys with smiling faces, you know, together, showing some togetherness. So maybe the images that were used are one that are inviting. They also use some good taglines. Have fun, make friends, win contests. All right, so what are the obvious messages in the flyer? Well, I think the obvious messages are, okay, you join this club, you're going to have fun and make friends, you're going to learn about science and technology. And let's see, what do I think or feel about this flyer? It has a positive images, and maybe I feel excited about it. But now let's think, what might other people think or feel about this flyer? Or what kinds of people are in this flyer? Take a look. What kinds of people are missing from this flyer? And what are the indirect messages in the flyer? So here you can see that after analyzing each other's flyers, okay, so in the class, they exchanged it using 9 key questions. This student said, girls are missing from this flyer. Can't I join the club? So now all of a sudden, right, she's questioning, well, there's no girls, right? And there's no girls who look like me. So can I join the club? So you can see how using these 9 key questions can really get students to be able to really think critically about the images as part of the message. All right, so then after getting this feedback, the students created a new flyer with a more inclusive message and more inclusive images. So instead they said, are you the next Einstein or Mae Jemison? Have fun, make friends, win contests. That they kept, right? Because that was motivating. And they kept the message, join us. We do science experiments. We compete in the Wonder Kid robotics contest every year. So the informative messages they kept, right? But they changed the images and they tried to make sure it was more inclusive. And how did children get there? These students got there by asking themselves, who isn't in the flyer? Who isn't represented? And what message might there be that is an indirect message, but then making it loud and clear for certain people that maybe you don't belong to this club? All right, so I thought that that was a really nice example, and hopefully you can use those 9 key questions, both for analysis and for creation of multimedia in the English language classroom. And I think I'm going to share one more example. I think we've got time, right? Okay, so here is another example that if I can share this, hold on. 1 second. All right. Okay. So another really easy way to engage your learners in creating multimedia and to practice their English, but also to really kind of personalize it is you can use photos. Okay, and then I'll give some examples of Book Creator. So one simple way would be to add text and image. And this is a story that's my own personal story that I used just using photos that were on my phone. And it's called The Story of Sherlock. I'll start to tell it. Okay, The Story of Sherlock. Once upon a time, there was a puppy named Sherlock. His mommy loved him very much. They worked together, they played together. Then one day, his mommy got married. Now he was part of a family. The children loved him, and he loved the children. But one day, the family adopted another puppy. Her name was Penelope. Sherlock was not very excited about this new puppy. All right, now I'm going to continue the story, but using Book Creator. I shall continue it to show you how you can integrate audio as well as video to just the images and text. All right, so we've gotten this far. We got that far. Okay, here we go.
Penelope loved Sherlock. But Sherlock did not like the new puppy. She kept following him around. She took up all his space. Then one day, Penelope wanted to play. Sherlock got angry. They fought and fought until Sherlock realized this was fun. And now they are best friends.
And that is the story of Sherlock and Penelope. So, did you like my story? So here you can see, you can have a simple like Google slide or PowerPoint to put text and image together. But then you could use Book Creator to add audio, or you could even add audio and video. It's a great way for students to share stories and to practice using all different ways to express themselves along with English. You know, one of the things that I didn't use for this Book Creator is that you could create a bilingual book, right? You could do it bilingually and have students use their home language as well as English for every single page, which would be another wonderful application of this. Okay.
How lovely, Joan. Thanks for sharing those wonderful examples of multiliteracies pedagogy and such a lovely family. You know, the story of a family can come alive, not just textually, but also visually, and also, you know, using voices and images. So this is a wonderful way to make the story of students come alive. So we hope that you, the audience, can find ways to transfer some of these great ideas into your own teaching context. We also want to invite you to think more about the ways that you can draw upon your students' linguistic and cultural resources and identities experiences in your own classroom. Think about the way, you know, those multiliteracies projects or learning tasks can come alive in your own classroom, in your content classroom, as well as language classroom.
Yes, so we hope that, thank you so much for those wonderful examples, Joan. We hope that those examples really brought theory to life for you. It's important for us to understand as teachers why we do what we do to serve multilingual learners, right? It's important for us to have theoretical knowledge, but it's important for us then to know how to apply pedagogies like a pedagogy of multiliteracies into our classroom practice. And I think this quote by a scholar in pedagogy of multiliteracies captures it very well. And Dr. Shin's examples just completely illuminated this idea that we can engage learners in rich and highly contextualized language learning by expanding their literacy repertoires to include the fuller range of communicational forms used in society: linguistic and visual and audio and gestural, tactile and digital. So we hope that you enjoyed those examples, and we thank you for joining us today. If you have questions, on the next page, we have our next slide, we have our contact information, and we would be so happy to hear from anybody who takes the time to enjoy this recorded webinar. Please reach out to us at George Mason University at our emails that you can see here. And thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.